This is Justin Amazon on Wednesday, February 3rd, 2021. I'm actually zoomed in on the 1 minute. This is yesterday, and this is the very first minute of how things opened today after earnings. I was actually really surprised to see that it had rallied up this much higher than 3,400. I'd even said yesterday, if we open up above 3,400, this thing should just keep on going. And I thought it was really interesting where this opened was really, really close, like 50 cents off of the high from Tuesday. It got above this uptrend line that was holding yesterday. And then within the first minute, it just came on right back down to this support, possibly support. And we'll see what happens the rest of the day. So let me switch back over to the 5 minute, what we usually look at. And I already drew in some lines on here. But if we just look at today, it's like, look at where this opened and it just had some selling. Put in a couple of really clean triangles. So this one that, depending on how you drew this line, you could have had this down here with trying to get some of the lows. Okay, the program just froze. Hang on. It'll snap. There you go. Okay, so it could have done something like this. It's like, okay, that's similar angle to those. I kind of like this one just because you're ignoring these wicks, and it's would give it an opportunity to kind of retest. This is pretty big pullback, and it really didn't do anything. I mean, even here with a hammer inside candle, it's just continued to break down, and just the selling continued to come in, just like the very open. So a bigger triangle here. And yeah, it just couldn't get anything going bullish except this move. This was a really clean move. We'll zoom out here to what I usually have 4 screens. So the 3,500 call that we've been looking at, and I switched puts. I'll talk about that in a sec here. But we put a really clean base right below the lows here. And we're really not that far off of the low. So this price is 505. So really, you want to see it come down close to the 5, but not break down, and to be somewhere within a dollar range above that, so you can be buying. So 6 by 5 would be a little bit tight. 550 by 5 would be nice. It came down to 548. I don't know if that would have filled someone for buying at 550. Maybe it would have. But that was still way over here. And I'm pointing on the call, but if you look at where that is on the stock, that's way over here. Actually, sorry, let me zoom in. Now that we're just zooming in on today. Okay, so this was the triangle. This was kind of the breakout. This is the last, here's the apex here, starts to break out. A little bit of a retest. It's holding the 21. You really could have been buying in anywhere along here. I put in this 505 low on this candle, which this candle was the very large pullback. And then it put in a 510 low right here, which was this candle. And this one was a low of 530. So this, just the options prices just doesn't make sense sometimes. But the low on this candle was 530. The low on this candle was 510. And then all the way over here, it put in another low of 505. And so really just getting in bullish, with the anticipation, okay, we pulled back into this level yesterday. We're holding right here today. If we bounce off of this and at least have some buying come in after, this much of a pullback and a rest, great, I'm in. Let's go. And, we get in at, let's say, even getting in 6 by 5 after this candle, and then holding that for a 3-hour gain. So that's going up to 9. It really would have been a pretty easy trade. And if you got stopped out, okay, just flip, because it should do some sort of retest and then roll over. It just did that later. If it had done, instead of this breakout here, if it had broken down from this triangle going lower and retested, that was this portion of the day, the last hour or so, hour and a half, where there was additional selling off that came in from this triangle's range, but we really had that off of this triangle, sorry, the bigger one here, and it really didn't break early. It didn't get all the way over to the apex. Really, once it broke the 21 here, retested back into it, and then rolled over and just continued on lower. And there were some opportunities to play that. So we'll switch over to looking at the puts a little bit. I was just trying to find some really clean lines, and it was harder to do. So we had a support here, it retested a little bit as a resistance here, and then it was holding a really clean high, but didn't really get as good of a pullback into that level. And this is already, this line is at 1030. And so a dollar risk on this would have been a little bit tough, you know, if you're trying to get in, you know, 1050 by 950, something like that. So I also went a little further out to look at the 3250 strike, and thinking that would have some decent volume. It had pretty good volume, and see what lines it had. And so drawing a similar low here, it had, you know, a close range. I mean, this is a much smaller dollar price, so dollar amount. So the option price isn't that far off. So this is 489 here. This is 514 here. It was kind of holding that same range in the low fives, high fours through here. But what I really did like is it broke out and had a clean retest right back into this line. Now, obviously, you don't know that this is going to happen, but that's what I'm talking about. This is somewhat of the retest, or at least a rest below this triangle to say, okay, if it's not going to come all the way back up to the 21, which would have been great, you know, where could you be looking to get in if we get a little bit of sideways action here? And this would have been another great opportunity to get in around 5. So this, again, 49, it got below here, put in a low of 472. So buying over here, 5 with a stop way down at 4, which it hadn't seen the $4 price since back over here, which was right back up at the line. So yeah, sure, if it had rallied back up to the 21, probably would have been stopped out in this one. It didn't. It just continued lower. Lots of selling, you know, just continued the selling. And this also would have moved from getting in at 5 with a stop at 4 for 3 hours would have been up to 8, and would have pretty easily moved up to 8 as well. If you had held on longer, if you were in this, and I mean, even if you had bought down here, it put in a really nice range down here. If I just shift this down, put in some nice lows around 3, and you know, it was right between 3 and 4 for a while. And so even getting in 3 by 4, I'm sorry, 4 by 3, or buying around 350 and getting a low below the 270, I think 277 was the low of the option today. Yeah, so even buying like 350 by 250, anticipating that it would roll over, that's another way to play this. So there was just a lot of really nice setups with some really good bases coming in. So on the call, it was through here, it was putting in a nice base on the call, and then through here, it was putting in a really nice base on the put. And you know, it moved in those directions then, which is really nice. So it put a base in the call, and then moved in the direction that the call would make money, and then put in a nice base on the put, and then moved in the direction the put made money. And so it just was really clean setups today. So what we ended up with was a really large bearish candle, similar to the one we had last week, where we pulled back into the 21. This one pulled all the way back into the 5, and is really a bearish engulfing candle from yesterday's high wave flat open close candle. I think I'm trying to remember if this has another special name. It's definitely a doji. It might be, I want to say dragonfly doji, but I don't think that's the wrong one. I think that's when the tail is much longer below. Feel free to comment below if you remember if there's a special name for this one. Shooting star, maybe this is shooting star, or maybe that has to, if it has to be on its own up here and then gapping down, it might be a shooting star. So that might be the whole pattern here. I'm just trying to remember what it is. But anyway, we've got some bearishness here. We obviously have some selling, and so this line, I'm sorry, this close, saying the wrong thing, sorry, this open and the highs through here, I thought once we got above these, we would just keep on running, and we didn't. And so we pulled back into it. If we get some sideways action, we need to rest a little bit more, just like we rested through here after this big bullish move. We rested these days just in anticipation of earnings. If we can rest a few more days like this and go side, I mean, we can still bounce around between 3,300, 3,400, all the way in this range. I wouldn't even be surprised if we came down to 3,250 if we stayed above here. And so that's, let me switch over to the hourly here. I didn't want to be bouncing around too much, but I talked about yesterday, if we can come back down a little bit more and put in an S curve off of this triangle, I think we could see this start to rally. And so that's the next decision point. If we stay in this range, if we go sideways, if we start to show, some clean hammers, some nice candles that are going to show some reversal, if we get some more continuation patterns, some stair steps that break down, some triangles that break down, I would be cautious about buying. I would be looking for the next lower place that it could move down to and put in some protection, because it could just keep moving down a bit more. And like I said yesterday, that'd be fine. On the monthly, on the weekly, it can go sideways for a whole lot longer. I think fundamentally there's some things that happen that were surprising to people. Just the headlines that Bezos is stepping down as CEO later this year. And so, there's questions. I'm sure there's questions around that. And, is this the best that the company can be? Is somebody else going to have the vision, be able to take it beyond this point? I think the chart says yes, but there may just be some concerns that with Bezos at the helm for so long, what does it look like? Let's give it some time, and people may just be getting out of some positions. So again, that's more the fundamental thoughts around it, not so much the technical. I primarily focus on the technical, looking at the chart. And so I appreciate your time watching, and hopefully you're getting um, some more information and learning something from these videos, and just connecting how the options are working along with the stock. So hope this helps. This is Justin AMZN. Thanks.